Hello there, everybody. I'm Alan Feldman.
And I'm Heather Bennett.
And we are from the Democratic Club of Laguna Woods. And today we're going to tell you about registering to vote and how about the open primaries, about the primary system. We have as a guest, Ben Hamataki from the Registrar of Voters. But before we get to that, I just want to first thank you for taking your time to be with us today. And I'd just like to tell you a word or two about the Laguna Woods Democratic Club. The Democratic Club's been in existence since 1964. So we've really been here since before Laguna Woods was Laguna Woods. What we try to do is we try to stimulate people's interest in the governing and people's interest in elections. And they are two separate things, closely related, but they are two separate things. I'm sure most people are aware that primaries going on now, the presidential primaries, generating a lot of interest, a lot of action. But we're interested in other elections too. We try to keep people involved and interested in statewide elections and state government. We try to get people interested in county government and county elections, even sometimes local Laguna Woods city government. What we try to do is also keep people involved between elections. That's when a lot of the work of government goes on. And because there's no election at the end, because there's no contest going on, a lot of people don't pay attention to it, and a lot can happen. One of the primary things we try to do is turn out the vote, get people out to vote. We devote a lot of time and energy to this during the year. We feel that it's very important. We do it really the most elemental way, trying to get people to register to vote and to vote. Now, of course, we're a Democratic club and we want everybody to register and vote Democratic, but we know that's not the case. So really, we want as many people as possible to register and to vote, regardless of what your political outlook is going to be. You know, we feel America runs the best when more people are involved in the process. Again, we are a Democratic club, so we work to elect Democratic candidates. But we feel that there are certain ideals and principles that are embodied within the Democratic Party. And we try to work for candidates who we feel will advance those positions. That's what we try to do throughout the year. We don't endorse a candidate simply because they're a Democrat. We endorse a candidate who believes in the same things that we believe in, social justice, economic justice. And we won't endorse or work for candidates that we don't feel work towards the goals that our membership shares. So that's a little bit about the Democratic Party. A little bit about the Laguna Woods Democratic Club, but it's not what this program is about today.
Okay. Well, I'm Heather Bennett, and my role with the club is the campaign chair and the Get Out the Vote coordinator. And what that means is I organize volunteers in the community to help get out the vote. Today, what we've decided to do is have a representative from the Registrar of Voters come in, and as a public service, we would like to educate the community on different rules, regulations, how the Registrar of Voters works, and how they work for Orange County and specifically to the Laguna Woods Village. So I'd like to introduce Ben Hamataki, who is a representative of the Registrar of Voters. He's a community outreach manager and has worked for the Orange County Registrar of Voters for 10 years in the community outreach unit. He oversees poll workers training, community outreach, and events, and translation of voting materials. So Ben, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Happy you came to join us today.
Glad to be here.
So the first question, I guess, would be, what is the function of the Registrar of Voters?
Sure. Thank you, Heather. There's a lot of technical terms that I could go into as far as what the function of the Registrar of Voters office is, but I'd like to keep it simple. First of all, we're not the register. We don't publish a newspaper. We get that question a lot. We actually get phone calls asking about articles that were published in the Register. We are not the Register. We are the Registrar of Voters. Also, in seasons like this, when we have a big election coming, and there's a lot of interest around the contests and around the candidates, we basically play as a referee, meaning that as this competition or as this election is going on, we conduct the election impartially, transparently, and make everything work so that voters are able to vote. Voters are able to make their voice heard. And then at the end of the day, we count the votes and we certify the results. So the function of the Registrar of Voters is just that. We are a county agency to conduct elections, and it goes without saying, but it's important to emphasize, we're absolutely nonpartisan. We are the agency that runs the election, as opposed to campaigns that promote certain ideas or candidates. We run the election, we play referee, and we count the ballots at the end.
Great, yeah. Yeah, again, this is a nonpartisan forum right here. So,
Yes.
Another question then. There's been a lot said about open primary.
Right.
It's fairly new to the county, or the state rather, and if you could just explain that, how that affects voters, and there's been a lot of controversy in some of the other states, or a lot of issues, I guess. So if you could, go over that with us and let us know how that affects voters here in the state, and more specifically Orange County and Laguna Woods Village.
Sure. And that is a big question. I think that because going back to the basic purpose of a primary election, which is to determine the delegate for each party to go forward to the general election, with that as the purpose of a primary election, when we use this term open, what does it mean? And specifically, what does it mean in California for our voters here? So again, the primary election is to determine who will go on to the general election. And in the past in California, it was by party. So all of the voters who are registered in a specific party vote for the candidate of their choice. The top vote getter within each party is the delegate for that party going on to the general election. So on a general ballot in the past, you would see one candidate for each party. Now, what we call the open primary takes the top 2 vote getters. This means that all voters, any voter of any party, can vote for any candidate of any party. The top 2 highest vote getters in that contest in the primary will go on to the general. So instead of seeing 6 candidates on the general election ballot, you'll see 2 for these contests. And they may be of different parties, they might be of the same party. But the way it works is that the top 2 vote getters from each contest will continue on to the general election. So this is important, and that's what an open primary is. However, very important thing to bring up is that this does not apply to all contests. The presidential contest is still done by party. And I think in talking about some confusion, that's where some of the misunderstanding stems, is that the presidential contest is still by party, whereas the rest, for the most part, the rest of the ballot is open in this sense.
So just so people are clear on that, if you want to vote for Bernie Sanders or Hillary Clinton in the presidential primary, you have to be a registered Democrat. And if you want to vote for Donald Trump, Ted Cruz, or John Kasich in the Republican primary, you have to be a registered Republican.
So the simple answer is yes, and that's a good way to put it. If you want to vote for a candidate in Party A, you need to be a member of Party A. That means that when you registered, you actually filled out the little bubble on the registration form that this is my party preference. There is an exception to that for those voters who did not choose a party when they registered to vote. In the past, it was called decline to state. Now, statewide, it's called no party preference, or NPP, but we'll use no party preference to be clear. No party preference means that you didn't affiliate yourself, you didn't register with any party when you registered to vote. These voters will receive a ballot that have all the nonpartisan contests. The strictly nonpartisan ballot does not have the presidential contest. However, in the state of California, there is an option for parties to allow no party preference voters to participate in their election. This changes because it's up to the party. It's not up to the Secretary of State, it's not up to me, it's not up to the Registrar of Voters, Neil Kelly, for the County of Orange, but it's up to each party to make that determination. And you'll find that in the sample ballot that's going to be mailed to you in a couple of weeks, that we have listed very clearly which parties have opted in to this option and which parties have decided not to. The parties for this election cycle who allow no party preference voters is the Democratic Party, American Independent Party, and Libertarian Party. So in answer to your question, if you are a no party preference voter, you arrive to the polling place on June 7th, you will have that option to vote strictly nonpartisan ballot or to have the nonpartisan contest plus the presidential contest for Democrat, American Independent, or Libertarian.
So those parties are offering an open bar as opposed to a cash bar.
Yes, in essence, yes. There's no crossing over parties. So
Right.
if you belong to one party, you can't vote for a presidential candidate in a different party.
Right. Before we get people to the voting booth, they got to register.
This is true.
But I have one quick question
Sure.
in regards to that. So at the polling place, they'll have this option. If they're a vote by mail, will that option be there, or do they have to contact the Registrar of Voters to get that ballot that reflects that?
Very good question, Heather.
Okay.
We have communication that we send out to all of our permanent vote-by-mail voters. So that's the voters who receive a vote-by-mail ballot every election. And by the way, that number has grown. We have about 700,000. More than half of active voters are now voting by mail. We have a technical name for this communication. We call it the pink card.
Okay.
Because it's pink. And this card is sent out to all of our permanent vote-by-mail voters that gives them the option. And it does communicate that this is up to the parties. These are the parties that are allowing no party preference voters to receive a ballot for the president in these parties, and it lists those parties. And I'm sorry, I do need to correct. The pink card is sent out to all vote-by-mail voters who are no party preference.
Got it.
Okay.
That's
That
what I-
makes sense.
yes.
Perfect sense. Awesome.
Who needs to register to vote?
Anyone who wants to vote.
Who would need to re-register? My question is really people do have questions because for innumerable reasons they don't know if they're registered or not.
Sure.
So I guess maybe the first question would be: is there a way to check if you are a registered voter or not?
Yes, there is. You can call our office, which the number is 714-567-7600. We have a phone bank who's staffing that. You can call that number. Or you can go to our website, ocvote.com/verify. And that is short for verifying your voter registration. There's a short form on that webpage where you can enter a little bit of information. It will check to make sure that you're registered to vote, and it will show you your, not just your registration status, but your vote-by-mail status if you're a permanent vote-by-mail voter, your registered party, also your voter history will be on that as well, so you can see what's on record.
Right, and that phone number is important. I want to repeat that just because a lot of people here in the village are not, let's say, tech savvy, don't have access to a computer.
Sure.
They'd be doing it by phone. So that's 714-567-7600. That's the Registrar of Voters, and they can tell you whether or not you are registered to vote.
Correct.
Okay.
Now, say you're registered to vote, but you want to change your party affiliation, or you can do that online as well.
As of now, the state of California allows us to register online.
Okay.
So yes,
Okay.
it is a re-registration.
Got it.
Any change to that record, including address change, so if you move, even if you move within Laguna Woods from this address to this address, it still means that you need to re-register.
Yes.
Party change and so forth is considered a re-registration.
Name change if you marry,
Yes.
divorce, that kind of thing.
Yes, the
Okay.
best way to do that. There are some scenarios where you could call in, say if a unit number is 2 instead of 3, but it's safest just to re-register. When you re-register online, then we receive that form very quickly, and we're able to process it and get it into the system in the fastest fashion.
And the last day to register to vote is May 23rd?
Yes.
Okay, is there any exceptions to that?
No,
or?
ma'am.
Okay, so May 23rd for the primaries.
Correct.
And I'm sorry, is there a physical location people can go to if they need to re-register, if they can't do it online?
Sure. Yeah, our office is open Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, and that's in Santa Ana. Also, city halls have these registration forms. Public libraries, they have an inventory of the registration forms as far as a physical location to go to.
Okay, how about the DMV? I know you can register to vote at the DMV. Can you re-register to vote?
Sure. Yes, those forms will probably be state forms, which when those are mailed in will go back to Sacramento before they come to us. Whereas the local jurisdictions, City Hall, public libraries will have our county applications, and those go straight to our office.
Okay.
So that's a faster way.
Now, the club, Democratic Club, we will register folks to vote also, and it doesn't matter the party affiliation. We will register anyone. Those all get turned in. We just want people to vote. That's our
right.
main. We want people to vote, for Democrats, but it doesn't matter. We just want people to vote. We want the process to work.
Right.
So the next question would be, how do I find where my polling place is? What if I've moved, or I know sometimes the precincts change, and I know that they've cut back our polling places here in the village. So how does one find out where they need to go if they're a poll voter?
Sure. The best place to find that is on the back cover of the sample ballot. And again, those will start hitting mailboxes here in 2 or 3 weeks. It says on the front, find your polling place on the back cover. Flip it over, and in the top left corner, we'll have the name and address of your polling place. An alternative way to find that is on our website. Once our polling places are locked in, and once we get within a certain window, then going to that previous web page at ocvote.com/verify, it will actually show the polling place. It will give you an option to look at your sample ballot and to view your polling place.
Okay.
So is the information about your polling place that comes through the mail,
Yes.
is that specific when you look at the back of that? My address is X, my polling place is Y. It's not a map.
It is specific.
It is specific, so you
Yes.
can find it right there on the back of
Yes.
the back of that. That's where you go to vote.
Correct.
Okay. And could you explain to us a little bit, vote by mail, which is a new concept to a lot of people. It was a new concept to me when I moved here. I haven't been here that long. So could you just give a little explanation of that, what it is and how people can avail themselves of it?
Definitely. So vote by mail in the past was called absentee voting. I think most of our vote by mail voters still refer to it as absentee voting. And that comes from a time when this type of voting was only available to those who had a physical need to vote from home as opposed to going to the polling place, or if they were literally absent from the county during an election. The state has changed that, changed the terminology to vote by mail, changed the requirements to basically, if you want to vote by mail, you can. You don't need to have a specific reason or any kind of backup documentation for that. Vote by mail ballots are sent out starting 29 days before the election. They start to hit our mailboxes about a week after that. That gives the voter 2 or 3 weeks to read over the issues and make that decision and those choices, and to mark their ballot at home in the comfort of their own home, and then to mail it in. There is also an option to drop off that vote by mail ballot at a polling place, any polling place within Orange County. So a lot of people are taking that, I think, based on time constraints and how busy life seems to be at this time. A lot of people opt to vote by mail because it fits their schedule better.
I think about 75% of the residents here in the village are vote by mail.
Yes. What we saw in 2014 was an influx in vote by mail voters dropping their ballot off. So we're kind of seeing a turn back to wanting to be a physical part of the neighborhood, wanting to get to know the people and to be in that environment of the polling place, but not need to cast the ballot there, not need to mark the ballot there.
So you can do that. You can take your vote by mail ballot and bring it to the polling station.
Yes.
Is there any place else you could bring it that it would count? Could you bring it to the Registrar of Voters office?
You could bring it to the Registrar of Voters office. There are more than 1,000 polling places throughout Orange County, so very likely that there will be one close to where you work or play on election day. Any of those in Orange County are, you will be able to drop off your vote by mail ballot there.
Even if it's not your polling station,
Correct.
if you were going to physically vote, you would go to location A, but you can take your vote by mail ballot any place.
Correct.
in Orange County.
Just make sure you don't cross the county line.
All right.
And how are the votes tallied? I mean, in the end, at the end of the day, on June 7th, how do they tally the votes?
Sure. So we're a central tally county, which means that all of the ballots are tallied at our office after the close of the polls, as opposed to other areas where the ballots are actually tallied in the polling location. The way that this works is at 8 o'clock, when the polling place closes, the poll workers there will close up, they reconcile signatures, ballots, and then they take those physical ballots along with the electronic ballots. Two poll workers drive that to a collection center. At the collection center, there's a lot of different polling places that feed into each collection center. At the collection center, we have sheriff's deputies who actually escort those live ballots back to our office in Santa Ana. Those electronic ballots are actually extracted and then airlifted through a vacuum tube like you would see at the bank from the loading dock into a secured tally room, where they are then tallied and all of the votes are tallied and then combined together for the results. So it's a very closed and secure process, and I'm actually very involved on election night in that procedure, and so I see it happening.
Yeah. There was a question I forgot to answer or ask when you were talking about the vote by mail.
Sure.
Now, on the back of the envelope, they're supposed to sign it.
Yes.
What happens if I've forgotten to sign it? And then also, what if someone has lost or misplaced their vote by mail ballot? That's really important. I didn't want to miss that. Can you go over that a little bit, please?
Yeah, no problem. So the requirement to sign the envelope is actually in state statute. It's in the elections code, and that's why that's there. We do get questions about that. We get phone calls about why do I need to sign on the outside of the ballot, outside of the envelope, excuse me. If the voter does not sign the envelope, we will send them a letter stating such and giving them the opportunity to sign that letter and return it to us. We then will pair that letter up with their envelope and the ballot will count.
And is that to verify signatures?
Yes.
Or okay.
Yes.
All right.
If that letter is not returned, we're bound by state law. We cannot count that vote by mail ballot. Now, if, let's say you're voting from home and you spill coffee on your ballot, we get that.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It's okay, don't feel bad. Any other thing that might ruin the ballot, or even marking erroneously somewhere or accidentally marking the wrong candidate.
Right, if they've made a mistake on the ballot.
Yes.
Or they didn't want to, yeah.
You can request a replacement ballot from our office, and we have a form online. You can also call that number we mentioned, and we will send you out a replacement ballot. You will just need to sign that this is the only ballot that I'm voting, and with that you'll be able to vote a clean ballot.
How about if you lost your ballot, or I can see it happening to
Sure.
me. You get it in the mail. Oh, I'll do it tomorrow.
Right.
And it goes, nowhere that
Yeah.
could
Or
ever be found.
Or the dog ate it.
The
We've
dog
had
ate
that
it, yeah.
too. We've had that. That would also be a replacement ballot.
That would be a replacement ballot.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
And people are concerned about the voting machines, the integrity of the voting machines. So I'd like if you could just give maybe a quick comment on that. People are nervous, what's happened in the past, and they're nervous that their vote won't count, or their vote might be something might happen. Somebody might do something with the machine that not
Sure.
reflect what they wanted. So could you just speak to that for a minute?
Yes.
For a minute.
This is a very secure system. It's a closed system, meaning that we're not transferring the votes electronically. As I mentioned, those electronic ballots are actually hand carried to our collection centers by 2 people, and then escorted by sheriff's deputies to our office, and then airlifted through a vacuum tube into the secure tally room. The system itself, again, is a closed system. This vote system has gone through strenuous testing. Secretary Deborah Bowen, several years ago, actually decertified every electronic voting system in the state except for the system that we are using, because those other systems did not meet the criteria for security that the Secretary of State felt was necessary at that time. And so our system was the one remaining system that can still be used in the state of California because it passed those tests.
Great. I'm hearing that we're having a great record turnout for this primary. So is there any plans in place or anything additional that the Registrar of Voters is planning to do for that?
Yes, definitely. We have been talking about it probably every day as we get closer to Election Day, and just knowing the trajectory of where things are going. One of the things we did in 2012 that worked very well was an actual timed test of how long it takes for someone to vote on an electronic ballot, as well as to process a line of voters. So we set up a polling place in our warehouse, and then all of the employees from the department stop what they're doing for a couple hours and line up, and we just go through this cycle where we circle through and we track the time it takes to get from point A to the roster, for example, and then from the roster out the door. We use those statistics to determine how many voting booths we'll send out to each polling place, line management training for our volunteers at the polling place, so that, for example, if you're dropping off your vote by mail ballot, we can take you out of line and just take you right up to the table and do that, so that you're not waiting in line and making the line longer. So there's a lot of things that we're doing.
We have to unfortunately we have to cut
We
you off
run
here
out
because
of
we
time.
actually
Sure,
run
yes.
out of time,
That
believe it
went
or
by
not. So
quickly.
Yeah.
I just wanted to, number one, thank you very much for sharing your information with us. I'm sure it was very helpful to people, certainly very helpful to me, and I'm sure to Heather too.
Yeah.
And I just want to let other people know, we just want people to vote. We want you to get out and register. We want you to vote. That's what the Democratic Club of Laguna Woods, that's what we want, regardless of what your political philosophy or outlook is. And we want you to vote all the way down the ballot. A lot of times people will take 1 or 2 races that they know about and are interested in, and they'll stop there. We ask that everybody go all the way down the ballot. Don't stop at the top, go all the way down. There's a lot of people running for office, and we would like you to at least cast your vote on all of the offices. And I think we're done with time, so I'll just sign us off. And thank you all for watching, and get out and register and get out and vote.